Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Reverend Dr. Vanessa M. Brown, and I am your host this evening for Beyond the Gatekeepers. And I say welcome to everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live audience. Welcome to our YouTube audience on tonight. We are so glad that you have decided to be with us again one more week. And so tonight we have an interesting subject that we want to talk about. We are talking about, so what about the vaccine? The vaccine. How are you all doing now? How are y'all doing now? And so I think it's very important that we have this conversation. We have some wonderful guests that are with us on tonight. And so we're going to start off with our presiding bishop. She's not a guest. She helps to host the show as well, as put the show together in the person of Bishop Yvette A. Flunder. She is our presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. She is also the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ, Oakland, California. Bishop Flunder, will you come and greet the people and talk a little bit about why we're doing this show on this evening?
Good evening, everyone. As I have been duly introduced this evening by Bishop-elect Vanessa M. Brown, Flunder, and I am really, really thrilled that we are having an opportunity as a family, not only, of course, as TFAM and the fellowship in all of its settings, but all of our friends and all of our supporters who are involved and engaged in what is going on now with the coronavirus and the vaccine. I've heard from a lot of people in a lot of different ways about the vaccine, and not only vaccine, but vaccines, as they are coming from different locations in terms of different companies and different pharmaceuticals who are involved and engaged in this. And some people with a great deal of angst and concern, others that don't believe that the vaccine is viable, others who have decided that they are just going to put all this in the hands of God. I've heard just about everything. And it felt like it was time for us in the middle of a rather unprecedented pandemic to have a conversation about how we are feeling. I think it's important to preface everything by saying that there is no wrong way, essentially, that I have heard from anyone that I've been in conversation with, because these bodies are ours, and we are the ones that have to ultimately make decisions about what we are going to do. But information is power. So I want to encourage you. I want to strengthen you and get you ready. Ask the questions, put them in the chat, but also you'll hear some things from some of our professionals who are medical professionals and holistic health professionals to help us and give us information. So God bless you. This is key. This is incredibly important for us, our families, our church, our economy, everything just about that is going on right now. So welcome to a grown folks conversation and a family conversation about the vaccine. God bless.
Thank you, Bishop Flunder. Our next guest is in the person of Dr. Ishmael Griffin, MD, FFAM. He's the chairman and CEO at Griffin Population Analytic PC. Dr. Griffin, will you come greet the people and let them know what you do and what you're working on at present?
Thank you, Bishop-elect. Again, as you say, Bishop-elect, I'm a MD, a real one. Sometimes I feel challenged by what's going on today. I am a 24-year career physician and a physician trained in population health and a physician embarking upon a study of holistic health in the integrated medicine program at the University of Arizona. What we have today is a very serious situation with a vaccine coming at the end of the year when there was a very trying time with COVID-19. I hope to share what I know because there's some limitations of what we know about the vaccine, its efficacy, and also sort of talk about some of the sort of risk stratification that needs to happen in order to make this vaccine administration effective. I guess I should say at the very beginning of this evening that in a study of individuals, large groups of people, particularly in India, without a vaccine, the rate in which there was recovery was 93.6% of that population. So one of the numbers that you have to remember is what would happen if a population of people, and in this case, a large number, did not take the vaccine. And that would constitute about 94% of those individuals recovering, doing well. Of course, we have great concern about the 6% that do not. And I want to compare that to two efficacy numbers on the two vaccines. So for Moderna, the efficacy rate is 94.5%. And for the Pfizer vaccine, it's about 95.6%. So if you start with that this evening, it might give you some indication of what we need to do going forward, in the sense that, as you can see, the recovery rate without the vaccine in large populations is very close to the efficacy rate of the vaccinated population. So I just want to begin there, and I just want to move on to some of the other speakers, because I think that much of what I have to say would dovetail the additional information we're going to get this evening. Thank you, Bishop-elect.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. Our next guest is Bishop-elect Andrea Vassell. She's the senior pastor of Faith United Church of Christ and the program director for TFAM Global. Bishop-elect Andrea, please come and greet the people and tell them what you're doing.
Good evening. Thank you, Bishop-elect Vanessa Brown. My role as a registered nurse, and as I have been advising friends and family, loved ones, and others who've asked, is to, if you're taking the vaccine, what is the expected reaction? What is a reaction that you can say, okay, this is something I can live with, this is normal, this is within normal limits, or something that a reaction where you need to call your physician, you need to go back to the doctor. What is an emergency and what is not? The other piece that I've been dealing with is responding to those around me with their doubts. People have a great deal of doubts about this vaccine. Some of it, a healthy distrust of the healthcare system in this country due to the history that people have had, particularly minorities, Blacks, Asians, etc., with the healthcare system. Can we trust the vaccine? I have some ideas. I've done some reading, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Our next guest is Nubian Flunder. She's the owner and formulator of the Healing Place Apothecary. Sister Nubian, come on and tell the people what you're doing, what you're working on.
Good evening. As stated, my name is Nubian Flunder, and my background is in holistic health and holistic medicine with a specialty on prevention. And so I'm here similar to Bishop-elect Vassell because there are many people who are uncertain about the vaccine and uncertain about some of the treatments that have been presented. And so I want to encourage people, those who have chosen or have chosen to delay administering the vaccine or flat out have decided that they're not going to take it. What can they do to protect themselves, to strengthen their immunity? What kind of practices can they employ in their daily lives so that they are keeping themselves as safe as possible, as well as those around them? Because, as we know, those with pre-existing conditions tend to be the most vulnerable. So how can we reduce and or eliminate our pre-existing conditions and give ourselves a more robust chance of recovery if and when we do come in contact with the virus?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nubian. And last but certainly not least is Jesse Jackson Jr. He's the former United States representative and co-author of books on civil rights and personal finance. Jesse Jackson Jr., will you come and greet the people?
Thank you, Dr. Brown, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. And it's so good to see so many more members of our family and friends. Let me, I guess I'm going to be somewhat in a devil's advocacy position this evening. I served while in Congress on the Labor, Health, and Human Services Committee. I created the National Center for the Research on Domestic Health Disparities at the National Institute of Health. It was one of the last pieces of legislation that President Clinton signed into law. When President Obama became president, I elevated the National Center for Domestic Health Disparities to the National Institute for Minority Health and Research at NIH. And these entities were created to gather data across the country, across NIH, across the entire medical profession, to address issues of health disparity. And we've witnessed over the last 4 years, from the highest office in our land, misinformation. We have witnessed an anti-scientific Dr. Griffin approach to the pandemic, indeed an outright denial. We've seen an unprecedented behavior from this administration that has undermined the confidence of the American people in the efficacy of this vaccine, the initial released data notwithstanding. If you remember, as the Operation Warp Speed began its process, they indicated that they were having a problem recruiting minorities. And that's obviously not by accident, that the major drug manufacturers were struggling with this, with getting a pool of minorities who would be willing to try the vaccine or to participate either at the placebo level or actually taking the vaccine. All I have asked is that they show us the minority data from Pfizer. Show us the minority data from Moderna. Don't ask us to trust anybody in an environment where everyone has been somewhat deceptive. The information has been fake. We don't know what we're putting in our bodies. And we've skipped the guinea pigs. We've skipped the rabbits. We've skipped the animal trials. And every day there is a different story that is now coming out saying, hey, look at this potential side effect, or keep your eye on this potential side effect. And we already know who has overwhelmingly, Dr. Brown, been victimized by or disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And so I, at some point in time, look forward to taking the vaccine. But I want to make sure that it is efficacious for me as an African American. For a father who is 80 years old with Parkinson's, I need to know what the impact of Pfizer and Moderna, Dr. Bishop Flunder, is on Parkinson's and the other categories that disproportionately impact African Americans. What is the data? Let us know what we're stepping into. Wearing masks, no problem. Social distancing, no problem. But are there remedies and vaccines that are on the table that will be coming forward, let's say in a few months, that might indeed improve the likelihood that African Americans will receive the appropriate inoculation? Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone who that I just introduced. I just want to start off with the first question. I think the first, and also want to go back to Jesse Jackson Jr. You wrote a letter, and I want to read that. But the first question I want to ask is probably to Dr. Griffin and Andrea and to Nubian. Do you think this vaccine is safe for African American people? And I'll start off with Dr. Griffin. Unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay, one moment.
We can hear you.
Okay. Me and Nubian Flunder have a lot in common, in the sense that there are a lot of remedies that can and are effective with COVID-19. But here are the facts. Most studies like this on vaccine efficacy go into 3 years of post-marketing study. We haven't had that. We just haven't had that. And I agree with Mr. Jackson. We haven't had that, and we need to have that. And we have to understand that we're talking about an mRNA-based vaccine, which actually changes your genome and produces a protein, which, because of the marketing and keeping it secret and the kinds of things that pharmaceutical companies do, we don't know what that protein is. So it is wholly untenable to expect for people, and I'm not injecting any value here, I'm just saying that it is legitimate for populations, African American and other, to have concerns about a vaccine that will change your genome and that you will live with, and that may have consequences 1, 2, 3 years down the line. And that's just the plain fact of it, folks. When you look at it and when you ask, that it will be the plain and simple answer. Now, I was being kind of funny when I came on and I said I'm a real doctor, because real doctors tell the truth. We are not TV Marcus Welby characters, and we admit that we don't have it all in our bag. There's a whole lot of other people that have a lot of stuff in their bag and have responded to this, because that number, 93.6%, in large populations in India, same biology, they got 93.6%, not because they were doing nothing. So they know a bit about this pandemic and other pandemics. And so we got to get real, folk. And what I want to do is I want to have this conversation beyond our community. But one thing we do know about our community is that we suffered disproportionately from COVID-19. What is not being said is that we know that there's a genetic predisposition to COVID-19 severity. We know that. It has not been completely elucidated, but the haplotypes right now are being found out. And so the other problem that we have with this vaccine is that it requires risk stratification, because a young, healthy person might do well without a vaccine, and we have to find out that individual who actually appropriately needs that. There is a condition called cytokine immune reaction or response that occurs in about 5% of individuals with COVID, the most severe, right? We know that there's genetic underpinning to that. We really don't know whether or not giving this mRNA-based vaccine will either make them worse or make them better. And the only way that we'll find out is in the post-marketing phase. We haven't had that phase. This vaccine is being foisted in our communities, and listen, it may be effective, but I'm saying it may not be. But it's a whole lot, given what we've just gone through over the last 4 years, or nearly 4 years, for us to now swallow and just trust. Unfortunately, we've had an administration that has produced this climate of distrust. And so that's my plain answer to it. And I want to say that, what I say has a lot of power, because, there's a lot of letters, and I put them there intentionally. But I have to be truthful, right? And I can't lie to you, and I have to be serious, and we need answers.
Thank you so much. Bishop-elect Andrea, Nubian, would you like to respond to what Dr. Griffin said?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Dr. Griffin. I have some questions about the mRNA vaccine. It is quite new. The doctors who are developing the science are still figuring it out, and they have done this rather quickly. And yes, Dr. Griffin, what you've said, that we do not have long-term results to weigh so that we can make a more educated decision. The truth is, we're in the middle of this thing, and we're being hit hardest. And when you're in the middle of it, it becomes a matter of risk management. What can you afford? And that is what I think the question is. My mother is 84 years old. Can I afford not to give it to her, knowing that given that she has home health aides coming in the house, she has people who are coming to see her, what has been happening? We have not been going to see her as much, so now she's more depressed. It's risk management. What can I afford to not do or to do? We do not have the information. No matter what they're telling us, we absolutely do not have the information. The mRNA, it's supposed to go inside and actually put the spikes on our cells and then fall away after it has done the work. What happens to it in the body after it falls away? Is it excreted? Does it come out our skin? Where does it go? We do not have the information. And I would love to see more information before I subject myself to a vaccine. But I also have fat people in my life that I'm having to weigh the risk and the benefits for. What can you afford? Is the price too high, or is it payable for you?
Thank you so much. Nubian?
Okay, can you hear me? So that, yes, I completely agree with Dr. Griffin and Bishop-elect Vassell. We simply don't have enough information, enough data to answer or to determine the efficacy of the vaccine. Normally, vaccines go through at least 5 to 10 years of study of clinical trials before they are brought to the market, and we don't have that, you know, so we don't have the information that we need to answer that. I believe, you know, in my personal and professional opinion, that it is dangerous, you know, as Mr. Jackson stated, it is dangerous to not consider the pre-existing conditions of people, their genetic makeup, their lifestyle, their ability to resist. You know, do they have other pre-existing autoimmune conditions? You know, without really being able to test this new technology, because really it's a technology, a new technology that we haven't seen before, and we really don't know how it's going to interact with our regular human systems. I want to take it a step further than Dr. Griffin and say, he said, you know, we don't know how it's going to affect us 2-3 months down the line or years down the line. I want to push that even further to say, we don't know how it's going to affect our next generation. You know, how it is going to, is it going to affect our ability to conceive? You know, is it going to have an effect on our birth rates? We really don't know enough to answer that. And we've seen before, I forget the name of it, somebody here would know, my mom would know, but in my grandmother's generation, there was a medication given to pregnant women that made their children barren. The women themselves did not become barren, but their offspring were barren. And so I am in no way comparing the vaccine to that medication, but what I am saying is that we need more data before we can make a real educated guess about the safety, not just the efficacy, but the safety, the immediate safety, and of course the ongoing long-term safety of the vaccine. I also want to say, you know, just to piggyback on Bishop-elect Vassell, is that I completely understand, you know, we are in a crisis and forced to pick the lesser of two evils, if you will. You know, it's like, do you jump into the lava pit or do you jump into the fire? You know, neither one of them. You have your protective gear. You don't have your you know, the things that you need to protect you from burning. You don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, I think that we are in a very interesting time, and I'm encouraging us to continue to ask these very challenging and difficult questions.
Thank you, Nubian. Bishop Flunder?
This is wonderful. I love our people. And I wanted our brother, Jesse Jackson Jr., to know that everybody doesn't know that you are officially our people. Okay. He has been inducted, all right, and to our community, and we want to love him and cover him. We just need for him to know that for real while we're talking today. He's brilliant, and we're blessed to have him. There are a couple of things that come up for me when I listen, and so I'm listening from the standpoint of being a spouse of someone who is in that age category that are very vulnerable. I listen as the pastor of a church, most of which are urban folks, and live in the neighborhoods that are the cut, where the percentages, our zip code is high in terms of cases of COVID, but also connected in many ways to essential workers. We have a number of them in our ministry and in and around us with our years of work, as Dr. Griffin knows, around HIV and AIDS, and now with years of work around COVID. So I think about the scale in all of those communities. I almost feel like the wherewithal to make some decisions about what I do is a privilege that perhaps I can have because I am not a hospital essential worker, because I am not a member of the many Latinx families that are here in Oakland who get one apartment and 10 of them live in there, and they all have different jobs all over the place, especially factory jobs and things like that. I'm not exposed to crowded places. City of Refuge has not gathered since we got the first shelter-in-place order. And we have been mindful in terms of how we do that. But I do know that there's a degree of privilege. And so it makes me ask the question to our medical professionals who are right on the front line, who are terribly disproportionately affected, as Dr. Griffin also knows and others know, right in the face of it, who are members of our church, and they approach us and say, should I have the virus? Rather, should I have take the virus? What does that mean? And how do we speak to folks who are in these crowded situations, and we say, well, if they don't have certain protocols at your job, just don't, just quit. So how does that work? Just quit. Just quit. Just quit. And I've heard that before. I said, well, that's from a lofty place that I can say just quit, because unless I am prepared to feed everybody that I tell that to and pay their bills, it's a complicated situation. And then the end of it, what then are the practices that we can put in place that can encourage people to be as safe as possible? Practices perhaps that should be happening anyway. They can be as safe as possible, but that in perhaps the risk of the shot, the risk of the vaccine, could possibly be considered a better decision than doing nothing, essentially, because of the way in which they're exposed again and again and again and again. So I would like to see kind of in our conversation, how do we balance all of that? Pastorally, and how do we balance it in our community? The depth of our love for the people that we are all called to serve. How do we balance that? And what may be some of your ideas? And might I also say, then there's the group that says, I'm going to get the vaccine tomorrow, honey, because I'm not wearing no mask and I ain't social distancing. That's a whole nother group. They were up in Washington, D.C. the other day, you know what I mean? And left all kind of vaccine spray, if you understand, from all of that carrying on that they did in Washington, D.C. There is that group. Now, I'm not weighing them with this group. I'm simply saying that that's not what I'm talking about. The vaccine as an excuse not to social distance and as an excuse not to wear a mask. Does that make sense? I'm talking about the other people whose lives are constantly on the line and they are constantly subjected to the coronavirus. I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yes. Unmute yourself.
Bishop, I just really so much appreciate you. It really is a matter of risk stratification. So I'm going to speak personally because I am that frontline provider that was in an emergency room not once but twice in March in a small trauma room without great circulation and patients coming in every half an hour, being resuscitated by paramedics and pumping chest and breathing air and intubating and resuscitating. In that instance, as you know, because coronavirus is a phenomenon of the amount of exposure, yes, that person probably is risk stratified to receive this vaccine. Let me be clear. Even though there isn't sufficient evidence, that person needs to receive the vaccination. And the reason why that person needs a vaccination is because at this time, that person works with the public and is a infectious risk, her or himself. There is no evidence now that the average 35-year-old, I'm not 35, walking the streets, right, who gets COVID, needs this vaccine. That we don't know. And the reason why I began with that 93.6% number in India is to really highlight the fact that the difference between that and the efficacy of these two vaccines, these two mRNA vaccines, that's just not great enough. We haven't done the studies. My job as a population health expert is to get the numbers, run the regression analysis, study it. Good, better, best. In these United States of America, find that number, power the study before you subject what would be, as Fauci said, 75 to 80% of America with this vaccine to get herd immunity without knowing what will be and might be some of the autoimmune side effects. And there's some biology to this vaccine. So it's about risk stratification. And it's not even so much about every elderly person, because now we know there's a genetic underpinning to COVID susceptibility. So we got to talk a little bit more deeply. We demand much more from our medical system, our scientists, right? So we got to get it right, because this country demands that. The good people of this country are owed that, right? And particularly folks that look like us. We've suffered a lot. We've gone through a lot. We don't need another Tuskegee. We can't bear another Tuskegee. And I'm not saying that anyone can bear it, but I'm saying the reality is that we have suffered enough. We have had to mass demonstrate in the streets because we have a predilection to be beaten down by police. We have suffered enough. We need numbers.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. My concern comes with, and it's in response to Dr. Valerie Bridgman's question, and she asks, I have an opportunity to be in a double-blind study. I haven't decided. But if Black people aren't in the studies, then what? Dr. Griffith has just said it. There's a predisposal for people who are highly melanated, shall we say that, to respond to the virus a bit differently than people who are not. Dr. Griffith spoke about the cytokinase response. Now, we haven't seen a great deal about that, but it is real. The way our system, our autoimmune system, actually kicks into gear when exposed to the virus is somewhat different. There are many people who did not respond in the same way. They started having system shutdowns. They didn't show up with the respiratory issues like the rest of the population did. And I'm not sure that there were enough studies done with people of color or highly melanated people in order to see, how does this vaccine trigger our autoimmune system? Is our response any different? And I'm not sure if that was done. I would like Dr. Griffith, to see the numbers. How many people of color, particularly Black people, were in your studies? What was their response? How was their response different from everyone else? Because I feel like we're rushing. And of course, we know in any stampede, there are going to be some casualties, shall we say. I'm hoping that the casualties don't all rest in our community. I need more information. And Dr. Bridgman, if you partake in the study and other people of color, other Black people are participating in the study, then we will have more information about how it affects us.
Thank you very much. And we do have more questions that we're going to get to. I wanted to make sure that we read this letter that Jesse Jackson Jr. Actually wrote, and I believe it was published. And so I think that we need to hear it because some of what we're already talking about is addressed in this letter. So it says, because of the American history of human experimentation on Black bodies, from the wombs of our women in slavery to the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, African Americans are justifiably skeptical about the first round of vaccines. From Tuskegee to COVID, from the syphilis experiments to the disproportionality of death and the behavior of the United States government when they determined that we were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, our concerns are legitimate. In fact, we watch our neighbors, whom we are to love as ourselves, attend rallies, oppose masks, hold large gatherings in defiance of the Centers for Disease Control and the recommendations of the NIH. From the highest office in our land, we witness not only unapologetic racism, but the deliberate spreading of erroneous health misinformation that disproportionately impacted our lives. Many of the Operation Warp Speed trials, in fact, could not even commence because recruiting minorities to participate was a significant issue. We are only asking one thing, and we do not believe it to be an unreasonable request. Show us the data of the trials for those minorities who participated in the trials. We just want to see what the impact is of anything we are injecting into our bodies. My father is nearly 80 years old with Parkinson's. I want to know what the impact of the vaccine is on Parkinson's. He called me last night and told me he wants to take the vaccine. Between his desire to provide leadership, to be first, to save lives, to save Black lives, to set an example, and that camera, I cannot reason with him. The way he has lived his life works against any advice that I can give him as his son at this point. I have significant allergies. I want to know what the impact of the vaccine is on allergies. I struggle with sleep issues. How does the vaccine impact my sleep issues? Others in our community have diabetes, kidney issues, sickle cell anemia. Why is it an unreasonable request to share with us the information on the impact? Why is this so difficult? Telling me that Black people are on the team that created the vaccine does not satisfy my desire for more information. Colin Kaepernick was on a team. Black people are always on the team. That's not the problem. The problem is you all do not listen to your teammates, especially your Black teammates. As long as they are blocking for you and you get to score the touchdown and you get the MVP award at the Super Bowl, the credit never makes it to the people who blocked for you. The ones whose knees are so bad they cannot walk on a red carpet and model like Tom Brady after the game. While we were defending the quarterback, you hid from us and denied us access to the concussion data. Those who did the blocking are usually overweight Black people on the front of the offensive and defensive line. As Americans, we thought we were all on the same team, but you took your mask off and your helmets off in the middle of the game. And you showed us who you were at Sam's Club and Walmart, and you were indignant on airplanes and public transportation. We watched minor offenses become death sentences in our prisons and our nation's jails, and you did nothing. And when you did do something, it came late. We watched you separate children from their parents on the border and lose their contact information. We watched as a plot was foiled to kidnap the governor of Michigan, who locked down the state to protect our health while we were dying in Detroit. You are inconsistent when it comes to empathy, when it comes to our lives and our health with or without a pandemic. Now you are asking us to trust you and join Team Vaccine. That's the problem. You want bygones to be bygones, and we would have to be some kind of ignorant not to see your racism and callous disregard for us as a problem and how it impacts the entire nation. Once we have the answers, we can make informed decisions about our lives, and we can do this without your marketing campaign, your opinion, and your involvement. In the meantime, we will continue to wear our masks and socially distance ourselves. But if there are more promising vaccines on the horizon, is it unreasonable to request or expect of our government the data of the vaccine's efficacy and impact on our health be released. Signed, Jesse Jackson Jr.
I couldn't have said that any better. Thank you, Dr. Brown. I can't improve on that. And I just want to add that here we are in the present, but there are those, because the vaccine is present, that want us to ignore yesterday, right? And tomorrow will be the future, but today we live in the present, and we see the behavior on the entire spectrum of time. So when the disease was clearly in Europe, the nation appropriated money. It began a campaign to create masks. It authorized legislation that the president hasn't invoked since World War II. They began creating ventilators and turning car manufacturing plants into whatever they thought was going to save European-like lives. As the disease came to America, what happened? As soon as they heard it's disproportionately killing black folk, they decided to open the economy back up. Started having rallies in Oklahoma, and the president began having open rallies all across the country. And so the lack of confidence that we have is based on real data from their behavior, not necessarily from the vaccinators or from the industries that are creating the vaccines. And I want to conclude on this. There is a problem. Anytime Pfizer, Moderna, Dr. Griffin, and others are before the Senate seeking waivers for liability for any side effects associated with the vaccine. That's a problem, at least from my perspective. Dr. Griffin, that's a question to you.
A number. Pfizer and Moderna, on my last check, are due to earn or are about to earn $50 billion next year. That's what it is. And our lives are more precious than $50 billion. Listen, there's a science to this, and you know, we have to follow the science. So when it's unscientific, we have to call it out. As medical professionals, we have to square up, stand up, and say that these studies just haven't been done, right? The data isn't there, right? We know there's a genetic predisposition. It has not been elucidated. You have not risk stratified well enough to determine who should get this vaccine, who should not. And that's just the way it is. So from a scientific point of view, it's not the right thing to do. So beyond all of that, so, you know, we are a very particular people now, right? We question just as the best of them, right? And so we don't accept anymore, and we vote. So we don't do that anymore. That's bygone. So we're gonna question this one. We're gonna demand the answers. You know, I'm not here to regulate anyone's personal beliefs or anyone's personal sense of safety or what they should do. If you want to take it to the heuristic and you want to say, I'm just going to trust it, then that is your personal choice. But there still is a right answer. There still is an answer based in population health, right? We have big data nowadays. That's what we learn in population health, big data, right? Get the biggest data that you can find of African Americans and African descended people and do this study. Also do the genetic haplotypes. I want to know what the genetic haplotypes are. The University of California, Santa Cruz has a website and they're beginning to do it. So let's go to that website and let's see what it says in terms of the genetic underpinnings of COVID. These conversations are based in fear and they're based in the concept of herd immunity, right? By the time you immunize 80% of the US public, right? You have 80% of the US public headed down a course that you don't know what will be, right? In 3 years. Can we take that risk? I don't think at this point we can do that. We just can't do that, you know? And, you know, folks, there's a lot of folks unlike us that look a lot different from us who would agree, right? But particularly us, we've suffered too much, you know, and it's a tough place for me to be in because, you know, people like me are supposed to come on shows like this and toe the line. But I want you to know I'm towing the line for science here. I am towing the line for my people, but I'm also towing the line for science. And my words have gravity. And I want to see those studies. I want to see those studies. We need to be respected. That's American medicine, right? I want, I'm a graduate of Johns Hopkins. I want Johns Hopkins to do this, do their due diligence. They can, and give us these. I want Harvard to give us these numbers, and we deserve it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. Bishop Flunder?
I wish I had a B3 organ and a tambourine right into here, because this is good. This is holy work to me with the conversations that we're having. So I want to be able to ask the direct question again. So what is our message then to our people? If the message is wait, because I think I like the wait message, frankly, for my own self, because every individual has to make those decisions for themselves. I think the wait message is an important message. I understand that it is not, to your point, Dr. Griffin, the same reality for someone who is in those emergency rooms. And when I want to go a little further, in those meatpacking factories and some of the other places where people are pushed together in order to survive. But I do really want, or to help someone else survive. I do really want to know from those of you who are health professionals here, what can people do to help themselves during this time if they are not going to or are going to wait on the virus? What is it that we need to do to keep ourselves? We know masks, we know social distancing. We can say more about that, but are there other things that we can do and we can add to our lives that will help us in some way to be less inclined to be infected, and also to empower our bodies in the event that we are infected? I'd like to know your opinions.
I think that Nubian Flunder has sort of led the way. There are so many things that can boost the immune system, which we know are natural substances. We've known this, we've done this. So what we've got to do is we've got to think of those integrative techniques that have saved us, and admit that we don't have all the answers right now. Because part of the social determinants of health is dealing with anxiety, right? We have to rely upon our mental health providers, our clergy, to help us get through this, because that's the only way we're going to safely get through this, is a combination of those, if you choose not to take the vaccine. And really be honest, that's where we're at. That's really where we're at. And so, I come from a culture, and some of you will understand this as African Americans, right, where you like the bottom line. I never liked when the doctor, gave me, sort of tried to placate me. I always liked it when he told me the truth, right? I knew what I was dealing with. And that's a principle that I live by, right? And as a community, we take very, very, very seriously those kinds of things. Culturally, that's something that's distinct about us. We like to know the real deal. We don't want to be misled, right? And if we have a diagnosis of COVID and we're not going out here, tell us it so that we know that we're just that sick, so we can get our folk to pray. So I think that's where we have to stand with it. But there are a number of things that we can do, and I'd like to hear from Nubian Flunder about some of these things, because I think they're important for us to look at this moment.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. I have been looking into, looking into some of the alternative medicine publications that have come out this year. And four places that really caught my attention and that have had some real success with combating and or preventing COVID. And I want to just kind of share with you a little bit about that. The first would be China. China, to the points that were raised earlier about the sheer amounts of misinformation that we have experienced over the last 4 years, that have created just a mistrust of everything, just mistrust of everything. But the fact is that China has had over 3,000 years of successful practice with herbal medicine, acupuncture, gua sha, qigong, lots of practices that have proven extremely effective with pandemics and infectious disease. In fact, they were really ahead of the game with the SARS epidemic. And a lot of the staff, the folks that work in the hospitals, the frontline workers were regularly taking Chinese medicine as a prevention, working right into the hospitals. And they have a very low infection rate of the first line workers. And so I want to say that I don't know if any of you are familiar with traditional Chinese medicine. It actually has very little to do with being Chinese and more to do with creating balance and harmony in the systems of the body. And there's a very strategic, meticulous process that we go through to diagnose and treat patients based upon their symptomology. And it's been very effective. I know that was a huge component to how they were able to arrest the COVID pandemic in China, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that they did not utilize other methods. That does not mean that people did not die and that everyone came away clean. And that doesn't mean that they didn't employ other strategic methods unrelated to medications and herbs, like strict social distancing, very strict quarantining policies. They were not playing, okay? Another country to look at is New Zealand. New Zealand has had huge success with arresting the virus in their country. And again, it was due to the fact that early on, they employed some serious lockdown procedures. They quarantined for 6 weeks. If you didn't participate in the quarantine, you got fined, okay? They were serious about it. And the other place that I want to mention is Vietnam, okay? They've also had a lot of success. And Japan. Now, Japan is a little bit different because they pretty much haven't employed a lot of these rules and regulations, okay? They kind of were slow to the game also. But here's the thing. Some of the scientists from Japan are saying that because SARS has passed through the country in previous years, that they may have developed some level of immunity to the COVID-19 virus. So I'm really interested to get more data on that, to learn a little bit more about that. But I'm saying all this to say that I agree that we have been through so much, okay? And one of the things that we all know that lowers immunity is stress and a continuous submission to the fight or flight syndrome, just panic, fear, desperation, oh my God, everything's crashing, worry, stress. It is essential, particularly for us as spiritual people, as people of faith, that we understand and know that there are solutions. There is never just one way to skin a cat, as the old folks say. There are solutions. There are ways to build yourself up, to strengthen yourself. If you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you have constipation, right? Let's start to be proactive about conquering these these conditions, right, that lower our general immunity. Why do we have such high numbers in many of these metabolic and chronic disease categories? Why do we have such high numbers? You know, how can we start to do something about that, to begin to be proactive? It's going to start with your mental health. And I totally agree, because if you don't have self-care, if you don't care enough about yourself to employ self-care, it's going to be really difficult to overcome a lot of the challenges that are the center of these chronic diseases, okay? And what I'm talking about are these predispositions to various diseases that make us more susceptible to contracting the virus and making us more susceptible to dying from it, right? Making our cases more severe. What can we do? I highly encourage you to start with developing your holistic health regimen. Drink water, exercise, meditate, eat plants, rest, okay? High doses of vitamin C. There's lots of antiviral and antimicrobial herbs out there that you can use to boost your system. Once you get the first symptom, if it's a sniffle, if it's a scratch in your throat, you want to do something now, right? Before whatever it is over proliferates in your body. You want to engage your immune system and give it a boost. And there's things that you can be doing every single day to give yourself a better chance. I don't want to sit here and tell you that we have an answer to cure COVID in terms of utilizing holistic medicine. What we do have are solutions to help you to prevent and also help you to treat the symptoms and lessen the severity and reduce the mortality rate. Dr. Griffin, I saw your hand up. Please talk.
Wait, before he goes,
okay.
Jesse Jackson has a question for Dr. Griffin.
Thank
and
you.
So I'm going to let him ask it. Sure.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Nubian Flunder for that very thoughtful presentation. Dr. Griffin, my question is this. Let me give the viewers a scenario. And if you can walk us through the scenario, that might be something practical in addition to what Nubian has suggested that we might be able to use. So, assuming I take the vaccine tomorrow, Dr. Griffin, can you share with us what precautions we still need to take in order to get about our day or to return to work or to return to some sense of normalcy? What does having the shot mean? And secondly, and I'll just ask them both at the same time, we're in the flu season. How do I know if I'm coming up with COVID symptoms or flu symptoms? And what do I do about this flu shot also? Thank you, Dr. Griffin. And thank you, Nubian. I think you have to unmute Dr. Griffin.
It was kind of answered. Nubian kind of answered it. We have to be more mindful of our preventative health, our baseline health, boosting and maintaining our immune systems at a level which sort of prevents susceptibility to viruses, not just coronavirus, adenovirus. The other thing that I want to know, we haven't gotten a number on the percentage of African Americans who were represented amongst that group of those with cytokine immune response and the spectrum. So they can give us some simple numbers, right? We need to watch our familial traits. There were many families that I saw where COVID was spreading in families. And it was a particular thing about the cytokine immune response was that it was, as I saw it in many patients, relatively asymptomatic. Patients weren't coming in with the full-blown respiratory symptoms. They were presenting with GI symptoms. And so in reality, what I saw were people who legitimately didn't know that their parent was sick. They didn't know, right, when they fell off the cliff because it was a rapid decline. So we've got to become more vigilant and monitor more. And there are even insurance mechanisms by CMS. It's insured paid remote monitoring and connected care that is available to seniors, anyone above 65 with 2 chronic diseases who's not under a Medicare Advantage plan. We haven't taken the veil of that insurance benefit, which is available to many seniors, right? So it's a mass education campaign to watch for symptoms that are not the typical ones. Understand.
Griffin, can you say that? Can you say that again?
What's that?
The name of the insurance.
Medicare, Medicaid. Medicare, Medicaid.
Quick question, but after the vaccine, do we still wear masks?
Yes.
Do we still keep 6 feet apart?
Yes.
Do we still not socially gather?
Yes.
Do we still raise concerns about who we sit next to on public transportation?
Yes, and we do all of the things, and we do all of the things that Nubian Flunder mentioned. We have to now be more vigilant about our baseline health states. You know, it's not. I mean, I want to give you all. You know, we all want a pill, but we don't understand how much prevention can do. We're looking for the acute. The answer is not in the acute, folks. It's in the holistic approaches. It's in the integrative approaches. And I just want to give a chance for Bishop-elect Andrea to Vassell to speak because I know she has a lot to share on this.
So sorry. First of all, Audre Lorde said, we were not meant to be bad. And so by that, we know that the systems that have been set up have left us predisposed to not surviving. Healthcare, for the most part in this country, even as we're being trained as healthcare providers, nurses and doctors, we're oftentimes told about what diseases the African-American community has and what we're predisposed to. What they do not speak about is the fact that we have survived. And we're still here, irrespective of the many, many tries to get rid of us, right? So there's a strength that is still in us, and we can depend on that. A part of that has been the ways in which we've cared for each other, the ways in which we have shared information. In this system, your biggest, I think the best you can do for yourself is staying informed. Staying informed. And I'm not speaking about just having a conversation with, someone else and giving your opinion, getting the facts, getting the information. For those of you who cannot wait and need to get the vaccine, know this, that even after getting the first dose of the current one that's been approved for Pfizer, you will need to get a second dose in 3 weeks. And after you've had that dose, you will not be immune to this thing until 1 to 2 weeks thereafter. And even after that, if you become exposed to COVID-19, you can still spread it to someone else. You may not get sick, but you can spread it to your family members. You can spread it to your elderly grandmother and all of that. So you will still need to wear a mask. You will still need to take the precautions, just so from the vaccine, you will more than likely not get sick. So that's important information. I'm sorry, Bishop, did you have something to say?
I'm just trying to understand all you believers in God and in the power of prayer. I don't understand, because many of the people, particularly among my conservative Christian colleagues, just say, plead the blood and anoint yourself with oil and go on out there in the world. And surely the angel of the Lord will protect you from all of these virus demons. And if they start coming for you, just rebuke them and cast them into outer darkness. That's what's supposed to happen. So I don't understand all of you people who suggest that you know God and having all these conversations about eating right, resting, drinking water, Sister Nubian, and all of the other things. And I'm a person of faith. What do you have to say to me? Hallelujah, about my faith. I'm trusting in God in the COVID. So what is it that you have to say to me?
Use your oil and anoint yourself, Bishop. Pray and speak in tongues. Wear your seatbelt when you get in the car. Also, I continue to pray. I continue to do everything that I do. And I wear a mask. Your health is your responsibility. It is important that God is going to bless you. How much blessing do you need? Do you need God to help you on a respirator? Or do you need God to just help you to not get it through a mask? What do you need?
It sounds like co-healing. Sounds like what it is that you all are talking about is that God has a part and we have a part. And that our responsibility is to co-heal with God. And I think that there's a beautiful theology right there, particularly because I'm talking to people who care about healing for our community. All of you all are people. I know you. So I know you are people who care about healing for our community. But it's a healing with responsibility. I think it's time for us to write something about it.
Flunder. I have hung around the Exodus during this plague and during this pandemic. And I find myself theologically, I'm a graduate of Chicago Theological Seminary, and I find myself arguing with brethren and sisterin in the clergy who are interpreting the plague through the New Testament, when all of the plague lessons are over here in the Old Testament. Close your door, put on a mask. Pharaoh's son is not exempt from this plague. And we're going to have to get out of Egypt at some point in time in order to just break away from what's actually taking place here. I say all of that to say that bad theology can hurt us too. So here's the reality. We have Christmas coming. We have Watch Night service, which is part of our Passover, part of our Nadir on the 30th of this month. We have Emancipation Proclamation Day on January 1st, where some of us gather as families. We have Martin Luther King coming, January 15th to about the end of January. Then we have Black History Month, where we have to go through our 28 days of reflecting on everything that we've done. And then we're right in Easter, right around early April. All of these are major gathering traditions in the Black cultural experience. And 50% of Americans will not be vaccinated during the major periods of our annual cycle that we gather. Now, with all of this science and information, it seems that the theology of here comes the plague, close your door. Here comes the plague, socially distant. Here comes the plague. This is not the flu. We need to stop comparing it to the flu. And just because you got a flu shot is not like getting a COVID shot. These are two different propositions. And that is also good theology, to be able to communicate, even the proper scriptural references, that this is not just another thing that blows through where the pastor gets to lay his hands on somebody, because early in the disease, half of Detroit's preachers and bishops were lost laying their hands on people. We watched it ourselves. And Dr. Brown, your thoughts, because I see I got you testifying over there. I want to hear what you have to say
You
about
know,
that.
you're absolutely right. I mean, we had a complete wipeout, particularly from the Church of God in Christ. I think it's just incumbent upon us as pastors, clergy leaders, and people of faith, and people that love our community. Loving our neighbor as thyself means that I'm not going to allow us to gather. I'm not going to allow us to come. You know, we're just not having service. I have people call me, complain, lament, cry. They miss. I miss you too, but I don't miss you that much that I want you to die, and I don't want to die either. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to make anybody else sick. And I think that we need to really, really, I mean, I see services all over and people are going to people's churches and still preaching and they're still gathering. And I don't really understand it, right? And I think that what we need to do as a people is that we need to make a decision and then we need to stick to the decision. At this point where we are with this disease, we don't have enough information to really say, everybody go out, run out and take this vaccine. We don't know enough. I think wait is the answer. I think delay is the answer. I think that there is no fire sale for me to get back to church. I think that virtual is fine. And that is what we will continue to do. And I pray for those who need to gather. I understand the need to be around people. I also understand our need to live. So I think that that's going to be very important to us going forward.
Self-care is not pride. Self-care is not poor theology. And those of us, again, we're 30 years into the HIV epidemic, 30 years. That's how long we've been at it. And we knew a good portion of that time how that virus was spread. It wasn't that we didn't know. But I know a number of people who engaged in situations and activities while they were trusting in the Lord, that it wouldn't be them. I think that some parts of our theology are an enemy to our own healing and our health. And this is an opportunity to take a good, strong, long look. A conversation that I had with my mother, with Nubian's grandmother, and it's interesting conversations with Mother Langston. She was talking about how people don't want to suffer. She said, these people, they don't want to suffer. People are always trying to find a reason not to suffer. She said, if you're going to follow God, you got to suffer. Because the people don't want to suffer. And I said to her, I said, Mama, something's wrong with people who want to suffer. And she stood and looked at me for a moment, kind of like Nubian's looking at me. Now she looked at me for a moment and she said, that's the truth. She said, but that's what I've always heard. You want to please God, you got to suffer. Something has to be done with what's the salvific value that's associated with self-sacrifice and demeaning oneself and disparaging oneself in order to please God. That's a whole nother conversation to have. Women in our community were deeply infected by that reality. But to some degree, we were infected by it because of the subservient roles that we have historically had to play. There's a conversation to have about not only giving ourselves permission to heal ourselves, but giving ourselves permission just to take real good care of ourselves, to prioritize ourselves, to be able to say no, and that's a complete sentence. No, without caveats, no, without explanations. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not going there. And to walk away from that, not feeling that you somehow have maligned and mistreated somebody. There is something deep down inside of us. And maybe, again, Bishop-elect Reverend Dr. Vanessa M. Brown, Mother Mary Brown's brown baby girl. Perhaps there is another conversation to have about freeing ourselves from feeling that there is salvific value in our suffering, and that after a while, I got shoes, you got shoes, all of God cheering got shoes, and when I get to heaven, I'm going to put on my shoes. Essentially, that's the way we were introduced to Christianity. You get nothing here, but one of these days, you're going to wake up in glory, and the great equalizer will fix things for you. Well, I like the scripture that says, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. I think it is time for us to bring our heaven to earth, and we have the power to do it.
Griffin, I see you, but give me one moment just to say thank you to our Facebook Live audience. Thank you to YouTube. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge some of the questions that have already been answered, but I want to make sure we get to this question, and then I'm going to go to you, Dr. Griffin. And it is from Shannon Pierce High. How real is the possibility that the vaccine will be mandated in the near future? Is it realistic to believe civil rights will be violated by forcing American citizens to take the vaccine under the threat of legal repercussions? And so anyone that can from this panel, please answer.
I think it's possible because these are extraordinary times. I spoke with a teacher who teaches in Raleigh, North Carolina, who had to fill out a form, get a doctor's permission sheet, confirm that she had these health challenges in order to be able to provide class and instruction from home virtually during the pandemic. Well, now that the vaccine is being introduced, the principal of that school is calling people back to work. The local school district is calling people back to work. But by what authority can they call someone back to work who has pre-existing conditions that say, I can't take the vaccine at this point. I need to remain in a virtual environment. And so it's going to present itself in very different ways. But yes, I believe there are going to be challenges because some businesses which have been prioritized and the economy which has been prioritized during this period, there are going to be people whose jobs will be threatened and will lose their jobs if in fact they don't show up for work. And there are consequences for that as well.
Dr. Griffin?
Yeah, I agree. I think there are going to be mandates for healthcare workers, for teachers. I think there will be some restrictions on individuals' ability to travel if you don't take the COVID-19 vaccine. But I want to go back to something earlier and say that we're going to get through this. But when we get through this, we have to have a little bit of memory. We have to have a holistic health millennium amongst the African American community, an integrative medicine millennium. We have to understand from this point on, from this, that we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to monitor ourselves, and that we have to watch ourselves just that more closely. We have to learn from experience. And that's the lesson we're going to take from this when we get over the other side. Now, 30, 40 years ago, there was a pandemic. There was an HIV pandemic. And there were many who believed that we wouldn't get through that, and we got through that. Prior to that, there was a tuberculosis pandemic, and we got through that. So we've done this before, right? So we'll get through this. But the real point is, as a community, what we learn, what is imprinted, how we change, you know what I mean? How we become more informed. Because that's really where I'm at right now. So, you know, it's really interesting. Right before the pandemic, I was involved in a community health educator training program at CUNY Mega Evers. And for those of you who know where CUNY Mega Evers is, it's in the heart of Brooklyn. And I was really proud of this program, teaching young people how to sort of educate themselves, educate community about health. And I think that's the way forward. And the many nursing programs that have done that for so many years, and the many public health programs that have done that for so many years. And notice I didn't say anything about the many medical education programs, because I think to a certain extent, we put too much emphasis on that. And we've got to diversify the way we think. The spiritual healers, the pastors, the faith community, okay? Because when you look at social determinants of health, much of healthcare does not happen in the doctor's office. Just doesn't happen in the doctor's office. And we're going to learn that. We really are going to learn that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. And so we're coming to time. I want to give everybody a chance to make final statements. And I will start with Nubian Flunder.
Well, first I want to say this was a great, I think Dr. Ishmael, if you can mute yourself. Okay. This is a wonderful conversation, and I am really inspired to hear folks asking the hard questions, and having the real conversations, because there's been so much denial and misinformation and downright refusal to comply with something I wanted to say. Bishop, you talked about co-healing with God, and I want to take that a little further and say, or to add to that and say, co-healing with one another is co-healing with God, and self-care is community care. Self-care is community care. If I don't self-care, I can't care about the community. I can't care about you. And one of the most disturbing things that I've seen this year is just the downright lack of care for one another. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to go to the function. I'm going to the lake. I'm having a party. I'm going to do what I want to do anyway, regardless to the impact that it has on the community. And that, for us, for people that look like us in this country, that's a core issue that we have to tackle, is our lack of care for one another. We care about our group. If you're Baptist, if you're Church of God in Christ, if you're a Muslim, we care about our core group, but really everyone else can kick the bucket. I almost said something, but I don't want to embarrass my mother. But many of us, the rest of the people who aren't in our group, we really don't care, because they're going to hell anyway, or they're not going to be part of this. And so I really want to encourage us, as we're co-healing with God, to know that God is all there is, and that includes those around you. That includes our community members. Be a good community member. Be a good steward of the community. Take care of yourself as a road to caring for others. And if we all do our part, we will be much further ahead in this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nubian, for agreeing to be with us on today. Jesse Jackson Jr., will you give us final statement?
I can't thank Bishop Flunder and Dr. Brown and Bishop-elect for your kindness in having me tonight. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to participate. I just want to issue a word of caution that we may be wearing these masks for another year or two. We may be keeping our social distance for another year or two, whether we are vaccinated or not. And I hope that there is an efficacious vaccine, and medical professionals like Dr. Griffin will tell us that the data is reflective of saving the lives of African Americans. The vaccine is an inoculation. It is designed to prevent the likelihood that we will catch the vaccine. But if you are deathly ill in a hospital today, struggling with the coronavirus, the vaccine probably can't help you. It's not designed to cure what you have once you make it to a hospital. It is designed to try and keep you from getting to the hospital, and understanding that once you catch it, you could find yourself in a very, very different position. And so I just want to thank all of you for allowing me to participate. I want to thank the frontline workers, Bishop-elect Dr. Griffin and Nubian, for your insights on the long-term health care needs of people of color, of African Americans specifically. And I want to thank Bishop Flunder and Dr. Brown for welcoming me once again. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So glad to have you here with us. Bishop-elect Andrea?
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Um, I would say that an educated consumer is the best person to take advantage of whatever is on the market. It is important that we educate ourselves. The healthcare system, yes, we have a healthy distrust based on the history. However, there is some good that is happening in the world. Many of us are going to wait. Many of us are going to take the vaccine. Whichever your choice is, educate yourselves. Healthcare has a responsibility. They're going to do what they do, but you only have one you. Your family, your community. Take care, as Nubians say. Educate yourself and do what you know is right for you and for your community. Because we don't know. We just don't have the data right now. And if you have to, do what you know is right, but do it as an educated consumer.
Thank you so much again for joining us, Bishop-elect Andrea. Dr. Ishmael Griffin, followed by Bishop Flunder.
A couple of things. We need universally across the board workers' comp benefits for those on the front line. There is no reason why individuals who are putting their lives at risk have to do so without some recompense if they get sick. We need to be reminded that there are benefits under CMS, Medicare, Medicaid to protect by remotely monitoring and providing chronic care management to seniors above 65 with 2 chronic conditions, and that insurance benefit is oftentimes not used. And we also have to push as hard as we can for universal health coverage.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. This was an incredible conversation. And I know that our family and our folks in the diaspora, wherever we are, that heard this and will share this will be helped by it. I appreciate you all taking the courage to go ahead on and speak what is in your heart and in your mind, to ask the hard questions, to answer what we could, to look for some more answers as we go along, and to cover this entire reality with our confidence in the God that loves us, the God that made us and knows all about us. I'm deeply grateful, and I want to thank our own Bishop-elect Vanessa Brown for her, not only her being with us to help navigate this, but also for her participation in her own place and state in life as a pastor and as a leader. This was incredible. Thank you, everyone. I'm excited. We're going to do it again. All right. Blessings. And we're going to make sure that Jesse Jackson Jr. gets all the information about what our upcoming events are. I want to see him. I want to have his presence with us. We feel so blessed and honored to have you. I need to give you this announcement. I have been tapped to be a part of the Faith Council for to help with President-elect Joe Biden, and I'm happy about that. We also had a long conversation with Bishop William Barber and the repairs of the breach, and we talked about the first 100 days. We now have a campaign, and we'll be talking online in just a little while about what the first 100 days should look like. And they accepted our recommendation to have a first 100 days plan to put in the hands of President Biden and Vice President Harris, that we are glad that they get into the White House now. This is what we want to see done after you unwrite all of the ridiculous executive orders that happened in the first 100 days before. We want to be able to determine what our first 100 days need to look like. A whole lot of what we said tonight should be a part of that ask. So I wanted to sort of put that in your mind. You might want to send something to Bishop-elect Vanessa. This is what we would like to see happen, such as your final statement there, Dr. Griffin. In our first 100 days, in the first 90 days to 100 days, in the first 6 months, in the first year. These are the things that we want to see. So we are telegraphing to this particular group of folks that we got you in, but these are the things that we're going to need to get from you for our people. God bless you, and thank you again for your participation tonight. Blessings.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, Facebook Live and YouTube. You have hung in there with us tonight. We had about 160 people on tonight, and we're grateful. We ask that you continue to share. This is a conversation that you want to share. For people that missed it, for people that you want to hear it, they need to hear what has been said on tonight. So please make sure that you continue to share this message. It will be up right after we go off air. We have a few announcements for you that we want to bring to you. Again, we say thank you so much for joining us tonight and have a wonderful night. Please join us for our announcements.
Hey, this is Dominique of Denman Turner, and our new project, Peace and Hope for the Season, has just been released. It is now available on Amazon Music Prime, Apple Music, iTunes, YouTube Music, Pandora, and soon to be on Spotify, as well as most other digital music platforms. Stay tuned for our forthcoming anthem, Show Up, which you are hearing now. Be sure to like us on Facebook at Denman Turner Entertainment Group and on Twitter and Instagram at Denman Turner.
It's an excellent CD. I hope that you can purchase that CD. Denman Turner, Peace and Hope for the Season, captures the rawness of a world in turmoil, yet one that continues to remain faithful and in a spirit of anticipation for God, Emmanuel, during this holiday season. I've heard the entire time. It is excellent. Please purchase it as you can. Our dear sister Nubian Flunder, LAC founder of the Healing Place Apothecary. Please purchase some items from her. I just received my rose water in the mail on today. I'm excited about it. I've used it before. The daily greens, the black soap. Please, please, please patronize this business. Buy a holiday gift for someone. It is good, good, good stuff. She makes it herself. And you can go to the website, theapothecary.com, to check out the items, get a price list, and order from there. Black Health Financial Management 103, checking accounts and alternative banking methods. This is in partnership with Harlem Pride, National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS, and TD Bank. And so it's Thursday, December 17th at 6:30 p.m. Free for young adults, 14 to 25 years old. Listen, let's get our young people here. Let's get our young people here. Let's get our young people here. Free for young adults, 14 to 25 years old. The purpose of a checking account, how to write a check, so many other things that our young people need to know. The RSVP is there for more information. Kara Solutions, focus on your passion. Let Kara handle the rest. Administrative, business, and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith and community-based organizations. Go to www.kara-solutions.com. That's www.kara-solutions.com. If you want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers, it's $30 for 30 seconds. Contact Beyond the Gatekeepers at beyondthegatekeepers@gmail.com. That's Beyond the Gatekeepers with an S, show@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us. Please support this and future broadcasts by sending a donation via Cash App to $TFAM Annual. That's $TFAM Annual. Today, our intro and outro is Optimistic by the Sounds of Blackness, covered by Jay Winfield. Again, have an awesome night.